Hello, everyone. Ukrainian military command continues to keep its cards close to their vest, so not a lot of news coming out aside from what we already know. So we know things that have already happened. For example, that they managed to move an entire regiment across the Dnieper River and establish multiple footholds in Kherson region, but they're being very quiet and tight-lipped about what they're going to do. And I think that is a good strategy. Just makes things difficult to report, but definitely not judging. So today we're going to look at some of the things that are happening in the enemy camp. This article appeared on the BBC site today, and frankly, I'm surprised why this is news, because sadly, this has been happening in Russia for quite some time. So what's going on here? Well, this article talks about Russian people reporting their friends, their neighbors, their relatives to the authorities for all sorts of things, primarily having to do with Ukrainian symbology or any type of critical expression about the war. Some days ago, there was a funny but real story about somebody who had a yellow blanket drying on their balcony. Their balcony happened to be painted blue. So, between the yellow blanket and the blue balcony, together they looked like Ukrainian flags. So somebody from a building across the street called the police and said, this person in that apartment, in that building, is displaying the enemy symbol. So we are at war with Ukraine. This should not be allowed. And all it was, somebody was just coincidence. Somebody happened to have a yellow blanket. Somebody happened to have a blue balcony. So even the police thought that was ridiculous, although that's not common for Russian police. And when the person took down the blanket from the balcony, once it was dry, they said that situation has been handled. But that was just one incident where all was well that ended well. Most of such cases are far more serious and sometimes end tragically. People have gotten into arguments, people have gotten into fights, there have been murders, attempted murders, etc., on this basis. And if not, people have been arrested, people have lost their jobs, people had their kids taken from them by social services, all because something, somewhere, was remotely related to the war in Ukraine. They may have expressed doubts whether Russian government was doing the right thing by conducting the war in Ukraine, considering, how many dead there were, how many resources were being used, and so on. They may have worn blue and yellow clothing. They may have listened to Ukrainian music. They may have been seen reading Ukrainian literature. All of those things at one point or another have been reported to the police, and some of the consequences were very, very serious. Drone attacks against Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, continue. So far, they're doing a good job shooting them down. I asked my dad about this when I was talking to my parents today, and he did say, they're doing a good job. So, that's good news. But again, I want to point something out. Russians keep claiming that they're bringing peace, prosperity, and culture to other countries. Kyiv is a historic city. I've been there several times. It's beautiful. Pull up some pictures. Look at Kyiv cathedrals, museums, even just some of the academic buildings, some of the university buildings are very beautiful. And so, because Russians are, on one hand, they're saying, we're here to bring you culture and peace and prosperity, and on the other hand, they're firing indiscriminately at a historic city. I find their claims very hard to believe. One of the biggest challenges for Ukrainian armed forces has been the delays in ammo deliveries and how quickly they're going through ammo. It's not just important to have good weapons, it's important to have something to put into them. And that has been an issue reiterated over and over by Ukraine's military command. But that particular aspect of the war in Ukraine is being watched not just by the people involved, Ukrainians themselves, but also by other countries, including the U.S. So the face of war has changed. In a lot of ways, the war in Ukraine has been unprecedented. The use of drones, the use of infrared imagery to uncover enemy positions, the extensive use of satellite imagery, all of that is new. We haven't had a major conflict like that in a long time. And so all of the new technologies that came to life in the last few decades are being put to use. And also, as we mentioned before, a lot of the experiences of this war are being documented and studied very carefully, including the use of ammo. Why? Because what does U.S. military normally do? Preparedness. They always talk about preparedness. They always say that basically we hope we never have to use these skills, but we need to understand how the war is waged because we never know where we might end up. And so some concern has been expressed over how quickly the war in Ukraine is eating through the supplies. So that is definitely one of the items to watch. That is definitely something that will be recorded and will be discussed quite a lot at military schools around the world. And another bit of news out of Russia. Yet another Russian general who expressed criticism of the war in Ukraine has been found mysteriously dead. So General Sviridov apparently was one of the people who criticized the way Russian government had conducted this war and questioned its merits. And so he and his wife were found dead at their apartment. They have been dead for at least a week, so that must have been a terrible sight. And cause of death is unknown. Well, it's known to somebody. It is Russia, after all.